welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That is the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This guy over here, that is Nick Wright.
Good morning, everyone.
Nice to see you, Nick.
We got to spend an extended day together yesterday doing a little marketing photo stuff for the show that the audience will see at some point. We're going to do that again today.
I put a picture of it. Do you see it? You don't follow me on Instagram.
I don't have an
Instagram
account.
on Instagram. And people were very happy with the way we clean up. And a couple people said we are the best dressed show on television. So
those were Chris Carter's burner accounts.
Exactly.
That's one of his
so thank you for writing that, CC. Made me feel good. Good stuff. All right. Well, as comfortable as you are in your home this morning, so are the Celtics. Apparently, Game 5 shifted back to Boston last night, where the Celtics were undefeated at home all postseason, where the Celtics are still undefeated at home all postseason. That after beating the Cavs last night 96-83. The Boston Celtics are now 10-0 at TD Garden. A worn-down LeBron James dropped a game-high 26 points. Wasn't enough because the Celtics were led by rookie phenom Jason Tatum. He had 24 points. He had 17 boards. The Boston Celtics are now up 3-2 in this series. Here's Al Horford after the win.
It's just different in the playoffs. So you get on the road and you're just out there against, everybody else. And, here I just think that our guys just feel, comfortable and good. It's credit, the atmosphere that's here. It's just a lot of fun to play in right now.
I mean, I just enjoy, playing in the big moments, in the big games. I think that's, when I have the most fun. When things are on the line, and a lot of guys stepped up tonight, and I can't say it enough. We're one win away from going to the finals, especially after everything we've been through.
Now that's a playoff chain. I didn't know the difference between the regular season and the playoff chain. That is the playoff chain. CC, you watched the game. How were the Celtics able to beat the Cavs last night?
Well, for one, I think it's easy for me to see that as a team, the Celtics are a lot better team than the Cavs. And they have more things that they can go to. They have Jaylen Brown and Tatum. Either one of them can get off at any point in the game. They have Horford, who is far more aggressive. The adjustment, Brad Stevens, what is he going to do? He did two things, put Baines into the starting lineup. People say, well, he only scored 6 points. The energy that he brought and those points early, it really helped them get off to a fast start. What else were they going to do when they got LeBron, especially against Rozier and others? They were going to front LeBron no matter where he was. So you'd have to throw a high pass over, which would take time, and they were going to double team on the throw. So those are the two adjustments that they made. Making shots in the NBA is very, very important, and how they shot the ball behind the three-point line early. Those were the biggest differences. The other subplots, the backcourt of the Cavs being terrible. I mean, J.R. Smith, of all four teams left, all right, there's 5 starters on each team. J.R. Smith is the worst starter of all the finals teams left. And last night was just even more evidence, all right? As Nick would say, man, right now I think JR washed up, right? Because he only looks a shell of himself when they won the championship a couple years ago and the JR that we even seen last year. So those are the things that I thought led the Celtics to the victory in game number 5.
To your point on JR, just to build off it, I'll go further. JR would not be in the rotation for any of the other 3 finals teams. Like, who's JR taking minutes from on Houston? Who's he taking minutes from on Golden State? Like, amazingly, you got more faith in Swaggy P than you do J.R. Smith right now for Golden State. He's certainly not taking minutes from anyone on Boston. But JR wasn't the reason they lost. He was part of the overall problem, which was there were 2 things going on yesterday. Because the Cavs, amazingly, defense wasn't bad. They was bad in the first quarter and then kept them in the game. They were even in the fourth quarter. They got 4 consecutive stops, but on the other end had 4 consecutive misses, and then 2 turnovers followed that up. Defense was fine. What happened yesterday was LeBron had a mediocre game by his standards, probably a subpar game by his standards, and everyone else was horrible. Kevin Love had 10 first-quarter points for the rest of the way. The 4 non-LeBron starters after the first quarter had 13 points in 67 minutes of action. George Hill and JR both make one shot. Ty Lue, who I was giving credit to with the adjustments he made. Why did Kyle Korver not play more? Well, Ty Lue says after the game, oh, well, his matchup's Semi Ojeleye, and he didn't get in the game, so that threw us for a loop. Come on, man. Like, this is the Eastern Conference Finals, one of the biggest games of your season. And then I'll go back to where I said earlier, LeBron didn't have the punch or the push that I expected him to have, knowing what he knew, which was we can essentially win the series tonight. And also once he saw, all right, we played a terrible first half. We're only down 11. They cut it under 10 multiple times in the second half, and it's not like LeBron was saving up something to try to have a closing kick. He just didn't have it last night. Now, he still gave you 26. He's led his team in points, rebounds, and assists, but that wasn't enough for what they needed yesterday.
You said yesterday this was not a must-win for the Cavs. It was a must-win for Boston.
Yes.
Can you talk about Jason Tatum and how impressive it was that he came out the way he did after having sort of a little bit of a subpar last couple of games in Cleveland?
Yeah, he played different on the road, but he's been probably their most consistent player through the regular season. He's even upped his scoring. That's one of the most impressive things about the Celtics, what they're doing. Their top 3 scorers, which have 6 years of NBA experience. Rozier.
6 years.
Yeah, Rozier's
That's
got
crazy.
3. Tatum, a rookie, and Jaylen Brown in his second year.
Yeah.
So that right there, poised, though. The moment wasn't too big for him. Great defense. This is the best defense I've seen Tatum play. So his overall contribution wasn't just that he was shooting the ball, that he was poised, but his ability to play defense, get deflections. I thought this was his most impressive defensive outing.
But this is why this is such a missed opportunity for Cleveland. Going into the game, what do you want to do? Hold Boston under 100. They did it. In fact, Boston didn't score more than 23 points in any quarter except for quarter one. What do you want to do? Make sure Terry Rozier still continues on the trend he had in Cleveland, which is not quite unplayable, but problematic for Boston. He was, I think, 3 for 15 in the game, and they were hunting him down on defense. Make sure Al Horford doesn't get off. Horford was good, but he was held to only 4 field goals made. You did all of those things, and you were dominated in that game from start to finish. There were times it looked like Cleveland could make a comeback, but there was no time in that game that Boston was not in full control of it. And it's not because the defense didn't show up. It's not because Boston went unconscious from 3. They did make 13 threes, but they took almost 40 of them. The
6 in the first quarter, though, were a huge difference.
Absolutely right.
Because it breeds so much confidence as you go into the second half of the game.
Halfway through this regular season, I asked both of you guys if it seemed like LeBron was asked to do too much on this team, that eventually would he just get tired and worn down, that physically he's doing a lot, emotionally he's sort of carrying the team, and the answer was a resounding, but that's what he does. He's good at it. He doesn't get tired. It seemed to be in his prime somehow in like year 15. I'll ask you again, in this postseason alone, is he being asked to do too much and just shoulder too much of the load?
No, that's who LeBron James is. That's the reason why he's so great. That's why there's a ravine between the best player in the world and the other best players. No, he had a bad day. To me, it looked like more of a respiratory thing. Some days you just can't breathe. To me, he had a hard time getting his breath. That's all part of being an athlete. Some mornings you wake up and you don't have your best stuff. But if he had some type of support, he would have been able to get through this game. But this is what LeBron James, and that's why his career has been so great. He's exceeded all expectations, even when he had the nickname the King and the heir apparent, the kid from Akron, who's going to bring a championship to Cleveland. On the cover of Sports Illustrated, he always exceeds expectations. But last night let you know, in the life of an athlete, can you have a bad day? And 26, 10, and 5.
That's his bad day, and that is the burden. And I will not give LeBron a pass this morning, because I can't sit on television and say not only is he clearly the best player in the world, but he's the best player ever, and then hold him to a regular superstar standard. I could say, listen, we all thought Chris Paul had a pretty damn good Game 4 for the Rockets. He had 27, 2, and 4. We all think LeBron played really poorly. He had 26, 10, and 5. But that's fair. Chris Paul is playing by a different set of rules, just like Durant is, just like Steph is. That is the burden of being the best player in the league unanimously and one of the best players ever unanimously. He needed to be better yesterday. period, point blank. He looked winded. The respiratory thing's interesting, see, because I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't experienced it, obviously.
Well, you
he
could
looked
see him
winded early.
Well, you could see the way he was breathing. Very seldom you ever see LeBron doubled over with his hands on his knees. A lot of times as a coach, you look at players on film and they train you. Watch for the guys that are grabbing their shorts. You know that they're tired. That's when you want to attack them. Also, when he went to the bench, several times he had some type of Kleenex or something that he was blowing his nose. You don't blow your nose in athletic competition unless you're having some type of respiratory or you're having a hard time breathing. That's what I saw. Not as an excuse. As a fan, an observer of the game, and a person who's been in competition, these are the things that you watch for. And also after the game. No one knows him better than Ty Lue. Ty Lue said in the press conference, he was winded. He looked gassed. Now, LeBron tried to go beyond that and try to, make it seem as if it wasn't a big deal, but his coach even noticed it.
I've said before that LeBron's uninjurable, and that appears through 15 years to be true. But he is not indefatigable. He's not someone that cannot get tired after the workload he's carried. We're just surprised when we see it. Now, they play in about 36 hours. I expect him to be as great as we've seen him throughout the majority of this postseason. That is the standard that he's set. But they needed a 40-point game from LeBron yesterday to win, given what the supporting cast did, and he didn't have it in him.
I know. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the luxury of getting a cold, so we're going to have to talk to him about it.
He doesn't.
That. No, he really doesn't. Coming up, a very serious story surrounding Milwaukee Bucks guard Sterling Brown. We'll talk about that next on First Things First.
At Buffalo Wild Wings, we'll admit that we often go overboard with our limited time offerings. We just can't help ourselves. Take our new signature sampler. For $15, you get wings and 3 shareable options, like fried pickles or cheese curds. Then there's our aptly named over-the-top nachos, a literal mountain of crispy tortilla chips loaded with your choice of pulled pork or honey barbecue chicken, corn, jalapenos, and more. Then top it all off with our new platinum margarita. Go overboard with us today at Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports. Available for a limited time while supplies last. Please drink responsibly.
Back here on First Things First, some disturbing news to pass along. Milwaukee police released footage from January of an officer using a stun gun on Milwaukee Bucks rookie Sterling Brown. The incident stemmed from a dispute over a potential parking violation. Milwaukee's police chief has apologized to Brown for what he described as inappropriate actions taken by officers. Brown says he plans to file a lawsuit against the department. CC, I'll start with you. What was your reaction to this story and to the footage that we're watching here?
It's not too surprising for me. Most of my adult life, all of my life, I've been aware of bad situations as far as African Americans and police officers. It's been brought to my attention by my mother at a very, very young age, by my sisters and brothers. Then it became real, 1991. That's when we saw Rodney King. So I've been watching videos all my adult life of African Americans being harassed, beat, tased, all types of things, shot to death by officers of the law. So how do I feel about it? The only reason why I probably watched it was because I have to make comments about it on TV. Well, the only reason why they're making comments about it on TV is because he's a professional basketball player. So now we're going to try to act like, oh, we're going to care a little bit. Oh, the media, oh, the public, oh, we care about it because we're fans of sports. People don't care because you know what's going to happen today? Other blacks are going to go about their business and they're going to be harassed the way we have been harassed for a long, long time. The reality of that video is being black in America is totally different than being white in America. So I'm tired of looking at videos of the same thing in 2018 of something that I watched when I was younger as a young person, and I've been watching all my adult life. So people today will care, but ultimately it don't matter if black people care. It only matters if white people care. Because that's the reality that we live with, that I live with every day, that you don't have to live with. Your kids don't have to live with. All right? I've been trained. I trained my kids. I trained all the kids that I coached in little leagues. And the kids who I coached, white kids, I didn't have to tell them these things about police officers because they're not treated that way. Now, I would love to see the reaction, God forbid, if it was Aaron Rodgers. Man, if this was Aaron Rodgers, then I believe something might happen. But no, this is just Sterling Brown, just another black guy. Nothing's going to happen. And save it how much people really, really care. Because I know what people care about. They invest their time and their resources. It's no different than our kids at school. We say that we care, and we keep watching them die every day. We say we care about police brutality, and it happens every day. And what do? We do nothing, because most of the cases, you can't even prosecute the officers. So in this case, let's see what happens in Milwaukee. Let's see if these offers are prosecuted at the full extent of the law. I just challenge white people today. I want you to go to a drugstore. I want you to double park your car. I want you to go in and buy something. And I just wonder, what is the probability of you ending up on your face and end up getting tased? Not real high. But obviously, if I decide to do something like that today, the probability is a lot higher.
Listen, your point on what if it were Aaron Rodgers, it's implausible, if not impossible, that this happens to Aaron Rodgers. Because, listen, we just know there's two sets of laws. There's laws that I get to live by, and there's laws you get to live by. You and I were talking before the show. I at times, sometimes at inopportune times, can have a bit of a smart mouth. And we were talking about if you and I were riding together, and if we get pulled over by the cops, what you would say to me about how I would normally conduct myself, as opposed to how I'm going to conduct myself with you next to me, and not because you're Chris Carter, just because you're a black man in America. But anyone thinks that, I'm glad we're playing the video. Maybe there'll be a few people that it shocks them into a realization. But we can just leave it to athletes for a moment. Professor Lou Moore did a great chronology via newspaper articles. This 1939, Jackie Robinson, traffic violation, gun pulled on him. Jackie Robinson. 1974, your friend Lynn Swann, a red light violation, gets beat by the police. Mid-1970s, Bill Russell in Los Angeles, traffic violation, gun pulled on him. How about just a few years ago in New York City, Thabo Sefolosha standing outside of a club with an altercation he's not involved in. He gets a nightstick to the shin bone and gets it shattered. People don't care. And I will go one step further with it, because this is what is so disheartening. It's worse than people not caring. Since these videos, you mentioned the Rodney King video, but there has been a proliferation of these videos in the last 5 to 6 years thanks to these, right? Thanks to camera phones and cell phones. According to every reputable polling source, white Americans' approval of the police has gone up in this time frame, not down. So the question that is asked is, are the police in these instances acting unlawfully? That's one question. Another question is, are they doing what the communities are actually asking them to do? Are people actually okay with, for black Americans, misdemeanor, if that's not even a crime, double parking, it's a ticket, it's a violation, being punishable by beating, by shooting at times? Because I know what people's response will be. Well, don't double park your car. We theoretically have a system of laws in place in this country where if you commit a crime, you go to trial, you can get, none of those are summarily executed in the street or tased and beat by a half dozen cops because you committed a parking violation. And I just want to add one other thing, because you mentioned the police aren't going to be punished or haven't been punished. They haven't been fired. Forget being prosecuted. They're all still officers. I hear a lot of people very often say, hey, we all know we have a few bad officers. Few bad apples is how it's put. But let's not lump them all into it. And I can buy into that. But I would request, I would implore, I would beg all the good officers out there, you're allowed to say something. You're allowed to report the bad apples, if you will, because I would argue they make your job more dangerous. The more people are afraid of the police, the more people are on edge around the police, the more at risk the good and the bad, but the good officers are. And so I don't know what it's like to walk in your shoes, see? I have an idea of what it's like to be afraid for my son, but I don't know what it's like to walk in your shoes. But was I surprised? How could you be surprised? It's America in 2018. I don't know how you could be surprised by that happening to anybody, whether he's an NBA player or not. I don't want to say what surprised me, but what was very interesting is that he immediately
or shortly thereafter, or as this has sort of unfolded, decided to use this as a teachable moment, if he could. He said, "This experience with the police department has forced me to stand up, tell my story so I can help prevent these injustices from happening in the future," which sounds great, and it's wonderful to believe that way and think that way, but we keep hearing these stories happen over and over again. Does he have a responsibility as an athlete, Chris, to somehow share his story over and over? Is there anything that will change by him doing that?
Nothing's going to change, Jenna. Like, they can stop fooling themselves, all right? Why, as an athlete, should I have more responsibility than other citizens?
Just because people are listening. This story is going to be shared more because he is an athlete.
Is Sterling Brown, is he more important? Is his life more important than anyone else that's died or been? No.
Of course not.
No, so no, I'm not going to put the responsibility on athletes. You know the reason why? Because athletes aren't in control. They don't control the laws, all right? They don't see what's put on the bill for people to vote on. No, the pressure is not on athletes. The pressure is on the same people that's been on for 50 years. It's on white people, all right? All right? Stop locking black people up. Stop harassing. Stop profiling. You know, because after today, Sterling's going to say his piece, but you know something? I got 7 brothers and sisters. I got a mother. No matter where they go, they're going to be damn terrified. You know the reason why? Because of white officers and them harassing them. And to think that some basketball player is going to stand up and it's going to change their life of my nieces and my nephews? No. You know my niece today, Pierre? She's going to go somewhere and her husband, they're going to be terrified if they get stopped. My nephew, my great-nephew, Tyler, you know what's going to happen to him? Not Sterling Brown. He's got a platform. My nephew, Tyler, don't have no platform. So, no, let's stop moving the burden on professional athletes. No, it's not their burden. It's up for white people to be able to change something.
The people in power obviously have the responsibility to make a change if they want to. And the last thing I'll say is this. For as long as there have been police in this country and black people in this country, black people have said the police treat us differently. And for an incredibly long period of time, white people, either publicly, politicians, newspaper editors, or just your neighbor, said, "We don't believe you. We don't believe you. Prove it." And then everyone got these phones, and it started being indisputable. It started to be provable. And what was, in general terms, the white people in power's reaction to it? To double down. Well, act better, comply, don't break the law, don't have a broken taillight, don't double park. Instead of saying, "Oh my God, we are so sorry. We didn't know what it was like. We're sorry we didn't believe you." And so if countless videos aren't going to change people's opinion, with respect, whether that was Sterling Brown, Giannis, or Chris Middleton, his teammate, who's going to join us shortly, or if it was Chris Carter walking out of the building today, nothing's going to change people's opinion on this unless they want it to be changed.
I'm going to tell you what's going to change. We're going to move on from this topic. We're going to change to something else. And I'm going to go about my life and my family's life, and it's going to be exactly the same damn way. That's what's going to happen.
All right, we're going to break there. We have much more First Things First after the break. Stay with us. The Cavaliers fell to the Boston Celtics last night, 96-83. They're now down 3-2 in the series, with LeBron and Kevin Love being the only starters to score field goals in the first half. The Cavs supporting cast was, well, let's call it below subpar. Nick, what happened to the rest of the Cavaliers not named LeBron and Kevin?
I don't know. I don't know how George Hill doesn't attempt a three-pointer. I don't know how A.Smith effectively lights himself on fire midway through the first quarter, and Ty Lue doesn't put Kyle Korver in the game. I don't know how Jordan Clarkson, once again, gets 10 shots up in 15 minutes. As bipolar, I shouldn't use that term, as hot and cold as the Celtics have been home and road, the Cavs role players have been similar game to game, not necessarily determined on where the game is being played.
Not just the postseason, since the trade.
Throughout the regular season, absolutely.
Yeah, that's why we shouldn't be surprised. That's the reason why I said Cleveland's not a great team. They got the best player, but it's not a great team. And the reason, because those other people, the inconsistency, when you talk about a critical game number 5 in Boston, and they're starting backcourt and George Hill and JR, I mean, JR had more fouls, well, I think he had 4, then he had points, assists, rebounds, and steals. He had 5 fouls. He had 5 fouls, yeah, because he almost broke his leg on the 1 foul. Yeah, he had 5 fouls, but less points, rebounds. He made 1 field goal. I mean, 1 field goal as a starter in the NBA and you're playing 30 minutes, like, that's just, it's uncalled for. And with Rodney Hood being down and them really having no answer, like, man, this is what I hate to say I expected to see. And this is the reason why I didn't predict that the Cavs and LeBron would make it to their 8th straight final.
I mean, this has been the reason why going into the Toronto series, you thought Toronto could win that series. You thought that if they got Philly, you thought Philly would be
any
terrible.
of those teams I would have picked over the Cavs.
Over the Cavs. And my guess is, we haven't talked about it yet, my guess is right now you feel like Boston's going to win this series.
Right. I told you yesterday, at the end of the first quarter, I would tell you the team in control of the series. You know, and it's like, yeah, I know you go back to Cleveland for 1 game. I know Game 7 for LeBron, but this team in the Celtics plays so much better at home, and knowing that they're going to have at least another 3 and plus another 7 quarters there, yes, that's why I have the Celtics.
Here's why this is so concerning, and I'll leave it at this. Because of what happened in Game 2 in Boston. Because I believe the Cavs are going to win when they go back home. Boston's been terrible on the road. The Cavs have been good at home. They lost first home playoff game of this season, and that's it. But we saw in Game 2, LeBron go to Boston, put up a 42-point triple-double, and lose. Why? Because all of his other teammates were terrible. Like, I think we can rely on LeBron in the Game 7 that I think is going to happen, being great. Someone else has to be at least okay.
Good. Even okay.
Oh, and I mean, they haven't had a single Cav not named LeBron score 15 points in the last 3 games.
Look, this is also the team that on the off chance they get by Boston, you said that the one team they probably would want to match up with is Houston. There's no way that team that you saw last night can hang with the
Absolutely
Houston Rockets.
They better not be thinking ahead of the next 5 minutes.
Right. All right, speaking of what's going on out west, we wanted a series there, and while it wasn't always pretty, it was a little lopsided at times, a little messy. It's exactly what we got. Rockets and Warriors all tied up at 2 games apiece after Houston stole a road win on Tuesday. That series now shifts back to Houston tonight for Game 5, where the Warriors have listed both Andre Iguodala and Klay Thompson as questionable with injuries. Here's Draymond Green on the Warriors' mindset heading into the game.
Kind of pissed off. You know we let one slip away. So definitely guys are pissed off, but encouraged as well. I love the way this team responds when our back is against the wall. I don't mind our backs being against the wall because I know, what we're capable of, and I know the level of focus and intensity level that this team's bring when that is the case. So, it is what it is. I think we blew a golden opportunity, but it's not one that we can't get back. We know we can go get it back, so it's no panic.
If I may, I just have a question. How does Draymond know how this team responds when their back's up against the wall? Since they got Kevin Durant,
they've never had their backs up.
They've never had their backs up against the wall.
The closest they've come was Draymond right there with his back up against a wall for that interview.
They've never trailed in a series. This is the first series they've even ever been tied in. They've never faced anything more than a sweep or a 5-game series. How does he know how they respond?
I think that Draymond and some of the nucleus players, they've been through enough stuff internally. Even like when they were bored during the season, there's certain little struggles, little challenges that you have as a team. So I could see why Draymond would be, yes, everything that we have faced. Now, if you haven't faced what people call real adversity compared to everything they have been, it's adversity to them. So you can create a world in your mind and transfer that to the other players. So yes, they have faced adversity in their own mind. If it's not from a PR standpoint, it's other things. The world hates the Warriors.
Sure.
Okay, so I believe that this is not something made up. This is real. Kevin Durant, he's faced adversity. Draymond's faced adversity, and they faced it this year, not playing up to the level of their expectations.
What do you expect to see tonight in this game, Nick?
Man, the one game the Rockets haven't had yet this series, and I would imagine if they're going to have it, it would be at home and not in a Game 7, so it would be tonight, is the three-point avalanche. Like, when you're trying to figure out how can the Rockets win 4 of 7 against Golden State, one of the games you bake into it is, oh, they have a 21 of 44 night from 3, and nobody in the NBA loses that game. Doesn't matter who you are. You hit more than 19 threes in a game unless your opponent does the same. You win that game literally like 98% of the time. So I think that is what I'm obviously the Rockets' game plan isn't going to be, we're just not going to miss any threes, but we haven't seen that yet from what is the most prolific three-point shooting team in the history of the league. That's what I think we're going to see tonight.
In my sports history, and the higher the stakes, the less my expectations on expertise, because the pressure and the level of energy and defense that teams play, that being in football or being in basketball. I never expect an exceptional performance late in the year and in championship. The reason why? There's too much pressure. The reason why? The defense and the attention to detail, especially when you get into a series, it's hard to get all those open looks when this is game 5. They've seen you 4 times in the last week and a half. So I never have those high expectations for guys in a championship level. I expect this to be a struggle. And I told Nick this before. Basketball, now Draymond said something. Basketball is not a game you can play mad. Now, Draymond can because he doesn't have to shoot the ball. To rebound, to screen, to do all the grunt work,
defense, yeah.
You can play mad. You can be pissed. But Kevin Durant pissed, it's not in him. Clay injured, it's not in him. Steph, I mean, even if he is pissed or mad, what's he going to do? Like, they're not that type of physical team. So I'm going to watch Draymond. I'm just going to watch the emotion and see how he tries to channel that to these other guys who aren't mad or guys who play with that type of chip.
Yeah. And, Jenna, if one of those two guys you listed as questionable misses the game, in Iggy or Clay, and once again, with just one day off between games, all these guys got to play 40-plus minutes after traveling from the Bay to Houston. That's something Golden State has not had to deal with. That's something this iteration of Golden State has no experience with. 2 games in 3 days where your starters are all playing 40-plus minutes. They're not used to that.
Yeah, it was a small thing, but in watching the video that you had broke down as far as Kevin Durant and that last sequence of plays, another thing that's a real thing I want to watch tonight's game, if these guys are injured, whoever's on the court, we do realize that whoever's on the court has not played significant minutes with the stars, with Kevin Durant, with Steph. And you could see Sean Livingston. In the last play, Sean Livingston goes right down the middle and is in the middle of the lane. Now, if Andre Iguodala's on the court, he goes to the right corner. So watch these other players,
right,
and watch as we get into critical situations. Do they know what to do because they haven't been in them a lot?
But Klay Thompson does know what to do, was in, and we saw him limping around in that last game. So let's see how much he can actually contribute.
Absolutely.
Again,
right.
Both Iggy and Klay Thompson listed as questionable for Game 5. All right, coming up, Mark Schlereth is here. That's all we have to say. That's it. That's the tease. That's why you should come back next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, we are joined now by Fox NFL analyst Mark Schlereth.
What up, Stink? Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Good
How's
to
it
be
going?
on the program. It's great. It's
Good.
great. Things are good.
Good. That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
NFL, that's what I wanted to know, that you're great.
All right, I'm out.
Good. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah.
NFL owners unanimously approved a national anthem policy yesterday. The policy requires players to stand if they're on the field with the option to stay in the locker room during the anthem. Teams will be fined if their players or personnel do not follow the new protocol. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said, quote, "We want people to be respectful of the national anthem." Mark Schlereth, I'll start with you. What do you make of this new anthem policy?
Well, I mean, again, the narrative on this whole scenario was never about disrespecting the national anthem or the flag. And I listened to your eloquent conversation about Sterling Brown. And I told you in the hallway, I have never one time in my life thought about telling my kids what to do in case they were pulled over, because there is a difference in the way white people and black people are treated by the police. So it's never even crossed my mind to have that conversation with my kids, and that breaks my heart that my African-American friends have had to have, every one of them I know have had to have that conversation. And that's sad. And so this has never been about disrespecting our national anthem. As a matter of fact, it was a sit-down by Colin Kaepernick originally, and Nate Boyer, Green Beret Nate Boyer, is the one who
cajoled him into
right,
kneeling.
to say, hey, kneel, because it's not disrespectful.
We would see it more of a sign of respect.
Right. And so, but again, the narrative, right? What was the tee-up question that you just asked me? What was the narrative is that it's disrespectful to our country or to our anthem. And that has never been the intent from Colin Kaepernick or any of the other players. It's really to draw awareness to what we just saw with Sterling Brown, who on a traffic violation got tased by the Milwaukee police. That's what this whole thing has been about from the start. And I understand being a business owner. You understand being a business owner. If things on the surface, even perception becomes reality. So if the perception by the American people and by our president and everybody else saying this is disrespectful, everybody buys into that, well, then that hurts your business. And I understand from an owner standpoint, they're concerned about their business, as well they should be. But again, the narrative has become disrespect, and it really has never been about that from the player's standpoint.
It's been even the way most shows or whatever, news or sports, put it on the screen. Anthem protests is how it's been. That's not what they're protesting.
Right.
If someone does a march, that is not a traffic protest. Like that, they're just marching through the streets. This is so frustrating because I do understand that because the discussion has been hijacked, because the discussion became this is disrespect of the troops, even though you have countless troops, active service members saying, I kneel in solidarity with the NFL players, that it's been disrespectful of the anthem, even though you have every player, every single player that has taken a knee or was sitting or raising a fist has gone out of their way to say, we are not disrespecting. We are not disrespecting the country. We are striving for a better country. But you're right that it has been hijacked to a degree to where that is how people view it. So I also understand why the owners would say, listen, we're not in the protest business. We're in the football business, and we think this is hurting our bottom line. What is so incredibly frustrating to me is I truly believe in my heart that the people angriest about this, the loudest people, whether it's politicians or football fans or just television viewers, they are not angry about how the players are protesting. They are angry about what is being protested. I think because if this were the exact same thing, sitting and then kneeling, and Colin Kaepernick and the other players were asked, why are you doing this? And the answer was, I'll be honest with you, I think our troops who return home from war defend that flag more than anyone. I think they are mistreated. I think the VA system's a mess. I don't think we take care of them. And I won't stand for the flag until we stand for them. The people angriest about the disrespect of the flag would be standing and applauding. The problem is not the method of protest. The problem has always been what they're protesting. And there's always been resistance in this country from the predominantly white power structure to any form of black protest advocating for equal rights. And the anger gets even greater when it's theoretically black folks who have made it, prominent black people, when the answer's always been, what do you got to be mad about? You're rich, you're famous, you could be a pro football player. Ignoring the fact that there's irony's not lost on me. Sterling Brown might not be rich yet, but NBA player, none of it matters. None of it changes in those moments for what they're protesting. And so I understand why the NFL did what they did. It breaks my heart that in this country this couldn't have been a unifying thing. It breaks my heart that people couldn't say we all should strive for a more just place, a more just police force, a more just treatment of all of our citizens. But we're not there. We're not even close to being there.
No, we're not there. I'm not surprised. I know the ownership of the National Football League. This is what I expected them to do. And I expected them to try to do it also without it being collectively bargained. You know, I can understand them with being the owners of the business. They could do what's best for the business. But you're in business with the players. It's a partnership. Everything's been collectively bargained. And to think that you could change the rules without them having some type of say, I'm not surprised at all. But at this point, last year, the owners did something monumental. They made a contribution, almost $100 million to the Players Coalition, to all the causes, to all these players, Malcolm Jenkins, Doug Baldwin, all the great things these guys are doing. Now, it's just going to be just an afterthought. Like, we'll never talk about that contribution they made because it should have been followed up with something. Their $90 million should have been followed up with a policy that took the player's voice in mind, that they did care. So for me, just like the Sterling Brown, this is just evidence. I know that they don't care. I know they don't care. And yesterday what they did was even more evidence of that.
What about the policy itself? Is there anything to the fact that players are allowed to stay in the locker room, or if they want to protest, can stay in the locker room, that now this turns maybe a little bit more turmoil rather than unity because you're going to have different fractions on teams who are in and are out? I mean, does it actually solve the issue that the NFL intended to when it was first laid out?
Well, the issue certainly won't be solved. I mean, they're just trying. I mean, the $90 million looks more like hush money than it looks like a partnership now.
Yes.
Right? Just keep your mouth shut. Here's $90 million, and let's make sure that we don't mess with our business. I don't believe that. I mean, if a bunch of guys are out of the locker room, we'll have counters. We'll have somebody going, okay, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so was not out there, and so I don't think it alleviates the issue. It puts.
So what does it do?
It closes a drape on a messy bedroom. It closes people come over to your house and your kid's bedroom's a mess and you ask them to clean it up and they didn't. What do? Do you leave the doors open or do you shut them? You shut them and say, oh, that room's off limits right now. And that's really what it does. It's closing the drapes so you can't see our dirty laundry.
And this issue will continue to be exploited for profit and for divisive purposes from people who think they can benefit from it. There will be people counting who is out of the locker room, who is not, because for good or for bad, the most powerful person in this country, the President of the United States, he said this morning, right after the show started, that if you're not standing for the anthem, not only should you not be able to play in the NFL, maybe you shouldn't be allowed to live in the country. And the belief is that this is a winning issue, and that pointing out the ungrateful black athlete is a winning political issue. So if there's guys in the locker room, we'll know who they are. They'll be pointed out, and this doesn't solve anything. It might be the drape, but it's a drape with a hole in it, like that people can still see in there.
If the NFL, if they cared, you know what they do? Because right now the owners, they want to make everyone think they're more patriotic than the players, and that's a bunch of bull. You know what the owners are doing? You know what the Park Avenue NFL office is doing? They're taking money from the military. That's why they got the people standing up. They in partnership with the military. The military is paying them to have those flags, to have the soldiers on every field. Why don't we talk about that more? The NFL is benefiting from this. And based on what you said, if I got a call from Washington, D.C. right now, and they were congratulating me on something, I would consider that to be fool's gold.
All right, we'll leave it there. Mark, stick around. We're back with more First Things First right after this. Le'Veon Bell was a no-show at Steelers OTAs yesterday. He remains unsigned after receiving a second consecutive franchise tag. According to teammate Antonio Brown, that's a bad idea. Brown said, quote, "You can't make anything better without showing up. That is my mantra every day on this show." Stink, how big of a deal is it for a player to basically shame another player about missing OTAs?
Oh, a guy that has his money going to shame somebody that doesn't have his. Like that's inappropriate. Like, you can't do that. That's one of those things. That's one of those locker room violations that you should never do. And all we have to do is look to Los Angeles and the Chargers with Hunter Henry. That's why you don't show up. Because what are the odds of you getting paid if you tear your ACL in some voluntary workout? Playing some football, doing some football drills, tear your ACL, then what are the odds of you getting a long-term contract, especially at that position, the running back position? I mean, he's already been around. He's already had the wear and tear. Like, yes. That's ridiculous. And Antonio Brown ought to keep his mouth shut when it comes to other people's money. You got yours.
I feel like this is a code that you keep to even post-career, to a degree, as far as chastising guys for getting money. I talk about NFL salaries a lot because it's a hard-capped league. And I think it matters. Like, money spent here is money that therefore can't be spent there. And this is something that about my commentary has always rubbed you the wrong way. Like, it does seem to me like there's a rule amongst players Like, we want everyone to be as rich as possible for as long as possible, and don't count my money. Like, that's the message I've gotten from you, which is why I was shocked that Antonio Brown, who's the highest paid receiver in the history of football, is going to go after any of his teammates who has yet to get a long-term contract.
Yeah, I mean, this is a cardinal sin. You don't talk about other people's money. And it just speaks to Pittsburgh. There's a lot of things. Well, why haven't they won a championship? Well, you know something? Talking about another star player's money, when you have long-term security, doing that in the offseason, where we could have been talking about 100 other things today in the Pittsburgh Steelers, but some type of way, they always manage to get themselves, like, once a month. Ben Roethlisberger, I ain't helping out the rookies. They think they know everything, don't need my help. And then we got another star player talking about another star player. So this, to me, as the world turns, this happens to be the Pittsburgh Steelers that are very, very talented.
We saw it all year last year. There were 27 stories about the Steelers. 26 of them were not even football related.
Not only last year, Jenna, since this collection of players, all right? This is the only time in Pittsburgh Steelers history that you have all these little subplots, all these other agendas coming out of the locker room. And I believe it's a team sport.
Right.
All right? It affects the bottom line.
Here's the deal, and Herm Edwards used to say this to me all the time. He goes, you're either coaching it or allowing it to happen.
I was going to ask about Tom.
So, it comes down, to me, it comes from the top. It comes down to Mike Tomlin. You either have to say, we're not going to do this anymore, or they're going to be real consequences.
What do those look like?
What is a real consequence?
Well, let's get an example. Okay. The Giants' new coach,
Pat Shurmur.
They had a player who commented. It was Landon Collins. He commented on the tackle
Eric Flowers, yeah.
Not being at OTAs. He said he's not here because he's mad because we signed Eric. The coach said the next day in the press conference, I told Landon, don't talk about another player. Don't let either if the player's not here, either allow me or the organization to talk about it. It's not your job to comment about players and why or why not they're here.
But isn't that Mike Tomlin's thing? Mike Tomlin's like, yeah, let's own it. Let's embrace the fact that this is a sort of a dysfunctional family, if you will. It sort of worked for us the last couple of years. Look how deep we go. We're consistently good. So let them have their whatever they want to do, and when we get out on the field, we're going to go play football. Hasn't that sort of been the way Mike Tomlin has coached this team?
There's no question. And you can talk about one of the most talented teams in the league for sure, but one of the most talented teams we've ever seen here in the last decade that doesn't have a ring, to show for it in the last 5 or 6 or 7. I don't remember when exactly the last time the Pittsburgh Steelers won a world championship, but it's been a while, and they haven't done it with this collection.
Before they had El Bell, before they had Antonio Brown.
Right.
I mean, it was Big Ben was there, and Mike Tomlin was there, but that's basically it as far as the key components go. And there's earlier we were talking about LeBron, and you were like, everyone says he played terribly. He did have 26, 10, and 5. Well, that was below what the expectations were for him. There are 28 teams in the league that would love to have the Pittsburgh Steelers' success over the last 5 years. The problem is there's 30 or 31 teams in the league that have less talent than Pittsburgh. Like, when you talk about overall offensive firepower, I think it's the best. It could be the best offense in the league. It's the only team in the league that has a consensus top 5 quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. It also has an entrenched head coach, has an excellent home field advantage, has a division where you get 2 free wins every year against the Browns. Like, there are a lot of edges you have in Pittsburgh, and they haven't fully exploited. I thought they would last year. I thought they could win the Super Bowl last year.
Right. Let me give you one of the most regal people I've ever been around in my entire life is Joe Gibbs, my first head coach. And Joe Gibbs used to say this all the time, and it holds true. And it holds true through I was blessed to be on 3 championship teams. He used to say that talent will make plays in the first 3 quarters, and great character will win games in the 4th quarter. And the problem that you get into when you have a collection of talent that cares more about itself than it cares about the collective of the team is that when the going gets tough, you're worried about you as opposed to us. And when you're not worried about us, guess what you don't do? You don't win championships. And that's the bottom line. And that, to me, is the Pittsburgh Steelers' problem. They have a championship organization at the top. They have a championship level of talent. throughout their team, but they don't have a championship attitude that permeates that team, and that starts from the coach.
Mark, you have a championship attitude. We love it.
Absolutely.